Hi everyone, and welcome to your next habit. Yesterday you were introduced to the stop at 80% full habit. And before we move on to talk about this new one, we'll take a minute, like last week, to look back on the habit that we've just finished our focus on. So the last 2 weeks we've been working on eating slowly. And as I've mentioned in our last video, and you've heard through all of these lessons, this is one of those really key habits for us moving forward. So this anchor habit of eating slowly is one you may have found is maybe a little bit more challenging than you thought it might be. And over the course of the 2 weeks, hopefully you were able to figure out some ways that you can help yourself slow down at mealtime and tune in a little bit more. So take a minute to capture in your owner's manual some of the things that really worked for you with this habit. What things worked for you that really helped you to be able to slow down at your meals? Was it chewing the food more thoroughly, making sure bites were cleared from your mouth before you put the next bite in? Was it something like putting cutlery down between, or perhaps taking sips of water between your mouthfuls of food? All of those things can be really helpful, and there may be other things for you that you found really work to help you slow down. The other piece to take away from this lesson is to look at the meals that you noticed you had an easier time eating slowly. So looking at those meals, what was it about the food you were having, where you were, things you were doing in particular at those meals that you think allowed you to eat more slowly? And then, can you do more of those things at the other meals in the day to make those make those meals go a little more slowly as well? So take the learnings from where things are really working and apply them to the places where maybe you're having a little bit more of a challenge with it. The other thing I wanted to mention about this past week, the lesson on Tuesday of this last week was our notice and name lesson. This is a really key one. You may want to bookmark, or if you haven't done it yet, take a minute when you get some time to go back and look at this one. Noticing and naming is a really key skill for your toolbox that you will hear me mention and we'll come back to a number of times throughout the program. The idea here is that just by tuning in and paying a little more attention to what we're feeling in the moment can really open up the opportunity for us to make changes moving forward. So what are you doing right now? What are you thinking right now? What are you feeling right now? And just pausing to pay a little bit of attention. And this is one of those things, if you think about a time in your life that, let's say something like the first time you were looking at maybe buying a new car. And prior to that, you had never really paid attention to cars. They weren't really on your radar. You weren't aware of what kind of car, different sizes of cars, 4 doors, 2 doors, different colors, just wasn't on your radar. Suddenly you tune into the fact that, hey, I'm gonna be buying a car. And all of a sudden your awareness to all of the cars and all of their features and all of their characteristics around you is highly tuned. That's what we're going for with this notice and name. The idea that by just by paying attention and noticing things can open up that opportunity for things to be done differently. So with the notice and name, the other piece that the lesson highlighted that I want to highlight again here as well is that when you're doing the naming piece of this, we're looking at doing it in a very kind, compassionate, non-judgmental way. So we're not looking at an opportunity to say, oh, you're doing that thing again. Oh my gosh, Irene, that's so stupid. Why do you do it over and over again? We're certainly not wanting to open the door for that kind of negative self-talk. It's really meant to be a lot more of this just being aware, non-judgmental, just noticing, hey, okay, this is what's going on, and you're doing this, and that often for you leads to XYZ, and bringing those things to your awareness. So add that notice and name to your toolbox, jot down some notes from eating slowly and your learnings from that in your owner's manual. And know that that eating slowly habit is one that we're going to continue throughout the rest of the program, and you will hear me mention that one. It's always going to be happening sort of on the back burner, and we now change our focus to our new habit, which is stopping when 80% full. So this one can be one that can feel like a real challenge. What is 80% full? And how do I figure that out? So I want you to try not to get stuck on the number here so much as the idea and the concept behind this. So the idea is we are often in a habit of eating beyond our needs. So we eat to a point where we're stuffed and not just satisfied. We're eating beyond that. And if we can start to add on to our eating slowly and pay attention to what's going on and how much we're eating, we can get to a point where we're comfortable with eating until we're just satisfied, giving ourselves just what we need and not anymore. So with this one, when you're trying to find this, which can sometimes feel like an elusive 80% full, you can frame it in any way that feels useful for you. So if you're thinking if the number helps and 80% full is a valuable way for you to look at it, go for it. If the idea of eating until just satisfied but not stuffed works for you, awesome. That's another way to think about this one. And when you're trying to tune into this, know that there will be days and times that you'll go beyond 80% full. Totally fine. What you're doing then is going, okay, so I think that's what 120% might feel like. And then some days maybe you haven't eaten quite enough and you'll be like, maybe I'm only 50 or 60% full here. So the idea is to try to get a sense of how all of these different levels of fullness feel by just focusing your attention on them. One way to think about this too is if you apply the idea of curiosity to it, again, trying to take out the judgment of it, or when you feel like the idea of restricting or potentially not feeling satisfied brings up some resistance for you, which I know it did for me with this habit. I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to feel hungry. That's not what I'm shooting for here. If you can apply the idea of being curious about this here, it can really be helpful sometimes. So instead of trying to shoot for a particular number, focus on the idea of being curious about how your body feels at different amounts of satiety or having had different amounts of food. And if you apply the idea like you would if you were putting your finger up into the wind to try to determine which way the wind was blowing, which direction the wind was blowing. So you can't just go, it's blowing that way. It's something that you kind of have to, you wet the finger and then you put it up in the wind and you have to think for a minute and pay attention. Okay, what's going on here? What am I feeling? And you're not snapping to a judgment. You have to kind of really listen in for a minute. That sort of focus or that sort of idea with the 80% full is what we're aiming for. So I hope that's helpful to get you rolling with this habit. Know that this one can be a challenging one. So if you're feeling a little frustrated with it at first, know that that's normal and keep at it and try to keep that curiosity about you to tune in and see where it takes you. Know that you can book a call with me. We can chat about what you learned and discovered from your eating slowly habit and possibly set some goals or some ideas for you around this 80% full piece and where you want to go with that. And have a fantastic week. Bye.